Evelyn's heart packed slowly, her fingers trembling as she folded a worn sweater and placed it into the old Navy suitcase she'd owned since college. The small New Jersey rental home smelled of cold floorboards and Brandon's stale cologne. Morning light slid through the blinds in thin, harsh stripes, almost like the world outside was watching her fall apart. Brandon Colwood leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a smirk carved across his face like he was enjoying a private comedy show. His voice dripped with ridicule as he sipped from a half-empty bottle of cheap beer, even though it was barely 9 in the morning. "So that's it?" he laughed. "You're really leaving? With what? 2 shirts and your sad little suitcase? Evelyn, come on. Who do you think you are? Nobody wants a woman who hasn't worked in years." She didn't answer. She kept folding. It was the only thing her shaking body could manage. Brandon stepped closer, lowering his voice so it sounded almost intimate. Except the words cut like broken glass. "You think someone's coming to rescue you? You think there's a line of men out there begging to take in damaged goods?" he snorted. "Wake up." Evelyn pressed her lips together, suppressing the sting in her eyes. She'd spent years trying not to cry in front of him. Somewhere along the way, she'd learned that tears only made him crueler. A heavy thud came from upstairs, probably the loose vent knocking again. She flinched anyway, nerves stretched thin after years of walking on eggshells. She zipped her second bag, the noise loud in the tense silence. Brandon laughed even harder. "Look at you. You can't even pack right. You leave your charger behind every time we travel. Honestly, it's embarrassing. You're embarrassing." Her stomach twisted, but she kept moving. She reached under the bed for the binder she'd hidden weeks ago. Documents, emails, screenshots, proof of things she never wanted to believe. Brandon's eyes narrowed when he saw it in her hands. "What's that?" he snapped. "Nothing that belongs to you," she said quietly. His jaw tightened. "You better not be planning anything stupid. Remember whose name is on this house. Remember who pays the bills. You're nothing without me, Evelyn. Nothing." She swallowed hard. For the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt something else, something small, fragile, but growing. Resolve. She lifted her suitcase. It was heavier than she expected. Maybe because this was the moment she'd secretly rehearsed for years. Maybe because every step felt like walking out of a burning building barefoot, trying not to scream. The neighbor's dog barked outside, followed by muffled voices. Someone slammed a car door. Life was happening everywhere, except inside this house where time seemed frozen. Brandon scoffed. "Go ahead, leave. I'll enjoy watching you crawl back." But he didn't know what she knew. He didn't know what she'd discovered in his hidden emails. He didn't know she had already sent one message last night, to the only man in her past powerful enough to destroy every lie Brandon ever built. As Evelyn walked toward the door, a faint rumble trembled in the distance, so soft she thought she imagined it. But that sound was about to change everything. For a long time, Evelyn Hart believed love was something you earned by sacrificing pieces of yourself, quietly, gradually, without anyone noticing the parts that disappeared. She once lived in Manhattan, waking before sunrise to catch the early train, heels clicking across the marble floors of a Park Avenue lobby. She remembered those mornings clearly, coffee in one hand, MacBook in the other, heart full of ambition. She was good at her job. Everyone said she had a gift. Even Alexander Reeves himself once told her she had a mind built for building empires. And then she met Brandon. Back then, he wasn't the man he would become. He was charming in his ordinary way, handsome, funny, grateful for her attention. He said she worked too hard. He said she deserved a softer life. He said he could give her the kind of love money couldn't buy. She chose warmth over ambition. She chose him. And slowly the world she knew shrank. It started small. He complained about her late hours. He said it was hard for him when she wasn't home to cook dinner. He said her career made him feel less like a man. Evelyn didn't want him to feel inferior, so she eased up. She stopped staying late. She turned down a promotion she had been secretly praying for. One night, he came home angry because she missed his friend's birthday dinner. "I don't want a wife who cares more about spreadsheets than me," he said. And she heard fear in his voice, fear of losing her. So she apologized, even though she had done nothing wrong. The next week, she submitted her resignation. The first 6 months at home weren't terrible. She slept better. She cooked more. She and Brandon had long conversations on the couch, the kind where you think you're building something real. She told herself it was a peaceful life. She told herself she didn't miss Manhattan. But the peace didn't last. With every passing month, Brandon's tone shifted. He started calling her lucky to have him pay the rent, even though they used her savings to secure the lease. He began checking her phone. He criticized the way she folded laundry. He complained that she didn't dress up anymore, though he never took her anywhere. He rolled his eyes when she tried offering ideas for his job at the dealership, and every time she grew quiet, he grew louder. You don't understand how the real world works. You should be grateful I'm taking care of you. You wouldn't survive a week without me. She believed him for far longer than she should have. The isolation crept in like fog. Evelyn stopped meeting her old coworkers for lunch because Brandon didn't like them. She stopped calling distant relatives because he said they judged him. She let go of networking contacts because she thought she'd never need them again. Her world collapsed from the height of skyscrapers to the limits of a 2-bedroom rental with peeling paint. But the worst part wasn't the insults or the control or even the loneliness. It was how good she became at pretending everything was fine. She laughed at his jokes in public. She smiled through every holiday dinner with his family. She hosted game nights where she served snacks and drinks while he bragged about his successful career and teased her for having none. People believed him. Why wouldn't they? Evelyn was quiet, gentle, easy to overlook. Brandon was loud, confident, entertaining. And the more she shrank to keep the peace, the more he grew. Still, deep down, a small voice whispered that she wasn't meant to live small. But she ignored it, because believing it would mean admitting she'd chosen wrong. And that was a truth she wasn't ready to face. Not yet. But the universe has a way of forcing women to confront truths they've buried. And for Evelyn, that moment was coming faster than she realized. Much faster. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. A day so ordinary Evelyn wouldn't have remembered it if not for what she discovered. She sat at the small kitchen table, bills spread out in front of her, the overhead light flickering as if even the house was tired. Rain tapped against the window in soft, irritated rhythms while Brandon blasted sports commentary from the living room. Evelyn opened the banking app on her phone, not expecting to see the same balance she'd seen last week, except she didn't. Her breath stalled. $42. $42 in their joint account. She blinked, refreshed the page, closed the app, reopened it. Still $42. Her chest tightened. They were supposed to have more. Much more. She had been carefully budgeting, stretching every dollar, cutting back on everything from groceries to heat, just to keep the household stable. She skipped her favorite Starbucks coffees for almost 2 years. She'd used coupons for toothpaste. She'd canceled her therapy appointments because Brandon said they were a waste of money. Where had everything gone? She checked the transaction history. Her pulse skyrocketed. Withdrawal. Withdrawal. Transfer. Transfer. Amounts she couldn't comprehend. A $3,500 charge at a rooftop lounge in Manhattan. A $1,200 charge for luxury spa package. Hotel charges, multiple, spread across 3 months. Even a $4,900 designer watch. Evelyn felt the room sway, her hand gripping the edge of the table. These weren't accidents. They weren't small. They weren't misunderstandings. Brandon had drained their savings, her savings. Still, she tried to rationalize. Maybe he used the wrong card. Maybe it was fraud. Maybe. But the worst hit wasn't the spending. It was a transfer labeled loan repayment, B. Colwood E. Hart guarantor. Evelyn froze. Guarantor. Her name. Under a loan she never signed. With shaking hands, she opened the attached PDF. Her signature sat at the bottom, her name written perfectly, too perfectly. It wasn't her handwriting. A cold wave rushed through her body as she whispered, "Oh my God, he forged my signature." She felt sick. When Brandon finally walked into the kitchen, wiping chip crumbs off his shirt, she confronted him, voice barely steady. "Brandon, where did the money go?" He didn't blink. "Relax. You emptied the account. You worry too much. There's a $40,000 loan, under my name." He rolled his eyes. "It was a business opportunity. You wouldn't understand, and it's our money anyway." "It's my credit," she whispered. "My future." So what? He snapped. You don't have plans. You don't have a job. You don't need credit. She stared at him, stunned. You forged my signature. He grabbed a beer from the fridge. You're being dramatic. I signed for us. Same thing. It's illegal. No one cares, and you're not going anywhere, so stop acting like you have choices. Evelyn felt her legs weaken. For a moment she thought she might collapse. She grasped the counter to stay upright. Brandon walked away, completely unfazed. Later that night, when he fell asleep on the couch, she returned to the documents. Her heart hammered as she flipped through pages. The loan wasn't the only thing. He'd taken out 3 lines of credit, all tied to her Social Security number. The total debt under her name exceeded $78,000. If she left him now, if she divorced him, if she stepped out of his shadow, she would be crushed under all of it. This wasn't just betrayal. It was entrapment. Financial, emotional, psychological. A cage dressed as marriage. For the first time, Evelyn truly understood. Brandon didn't want a wife. He wanted ownership. And if she didn't move soon, smartly, quietly, he would destroy everything she had left. But fate was already moving faster than either of them knew. Much faster. The night Evelyn discovered the truth about Brandon's affair didn't begin with suspicion. It began with exhaustion. Raw, bone-deep exhaustion. She had spent the afternoon silently crying in the bathroom after uncovering the forged loan documents. Her eyes were still swollen when she stepped into the hallway, only to hear Brandon laughing from the living room, as carefree as if her entire world hadn't just collapsed. He was sprawled across the couch, phone in hand, grinning at something. Evelyn almost walked past him, desperate to avoid another fight, but then she heard it, a young woman's voice spilling through the tiny phone speaker. "Miss you already?" The girl giggled. Evelyn froze. Brandon sat up, startled, then immediately tried to lock his phone. But his hands were clumsy from drinking, and the screen remained lit for a full second, long enough for Evelyn to see a name, Daisy Morgan. She didn't know who Daisy was, but she recognized the tone. Sweet, youthful, dripping with a kind of flirtation that didn't belong in a married man's inbox. Her heart slammed painfully against her ribs. Brandon quickly turned the phone face down on the cushion, clearing his throat. "It's a coworker. Calm down. She said she misses you," Evelyn whispered. He scoffed. "You heard wrong. She didn't argue. Her voice had run out hours ago. Instead, she waited. She cooked dinner, cleaned the dishes, sat quietly while he watched TV, pretended everything was fine until he fell asleep, snoring loudly, one sock hanging halfway off his foot. Then she reached for the phone. It was passcode protected, but she knew his habits. She tried his birthday. Incorrect. Tried his favorite football player's jersey number. Incorrect. Tried her own birthday, because he always used dates tied to himself, never to them. Incorrect. Her stomach twisted. He had changed it. For a long moment, she just sat on the edge of the couch, breathing in the scent of stale beer and cheap deodorant. She remembered a time when she would have been terrified to touch his phone at all. Not anymore. She placed the phone gently back where she found it and stood. She couldn't get into the phone, but she could check something else. Their phone plan. Her hands shook as she logged into the carrier website. Brandon never bothered changing that password. It was the same since they first moved in together. The message logs loaded. There were hundreds of texts to Daisy Morgan, all times when Brandon claimed to be working late or stuck in traffic. She scrolled slowly, stomach churning as she read the message previews. "Can't wait to see you again. She doesn't suspect anything. You're the only one who gets me. Wish you were here instead of her." Then came the final crushing blow. A hotel reservation confirmation. Brooklyn Waterfront Hotel, 1 king bed. Booked Friday to Sunday. Under Brandon's name. She checked the dates. One of those weekends he had told her he was attending a mandatory sales conference. She had packed his suitcase for him. She had ironed his shirts. She had wished him luck. Now she knew the truth. Her knees weakened, and she caught herself on the counter as a wave of nausea rolled through her. She wanted to scream, cry, throw something, do anything to release the pressure inside her chest. But she didn't. Instead, she quietly printed the hotel confirmation and the message logs. She placed the papers in the binder under her bed, the same binder holding the forged loan documents, bank withdrawals, and every red flag she had tried to ignore for years. She didn't wake Brandon. She didn't confront him. She didn't even allow herself the dignity of yelling. She just whispered into the darkness, "I'm done." But she wasn't done, not yet, because the truth she uncovered next would make everything she'd seen so far look small, very small. The morning after discovering Brandon's web of lies, Evelyn woke with a pounding headache, not from lack of sleep, but from the kind of heaviness that settles in a woman's bones after years of enduring what she never deserved. She moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing coffee she knew she wouldn't drink. Her hands trembled each time she reached for something, as if her body had absorbed the shock her mind was still trying to process. Brandon had already left for work, or at least claimed to. His cologne lingered in the hallway like a mocking echo. Evelyn wished the house felt bigger without him, but instead it felt suffocating. Every corner held a memory of how small she had made herself to keep him from erupting. She was rinsing a mug when a knock rattled the front door. Startled, she froze. Hardly anyone ever visited her. Brandon didn't allow guests, not really. Even her sister had stopped dropping by after he made her uncomfortable one Christmas Eve. Another knock, gentler this time. Evelyn wiped her hands and opened the door. There stood Mrs. Nancy Porter, her elderly next-door neighbor. Nancy was in her early 70s, hair curled neatly, cardigan buttoned up despite the warm breeze. She held a small plate covered with foil and a look in her eyes Evelyn couldn't decipher. "Good morning, dear," Nancy said softly. "I baked some banana bread. Thought you might want a slice." Evelyn blinked. She couldn't remember the last time someone brought her anything. "Thank you," she whispered, voice uneven. "You didn't have to." Nancy stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Evelyn, honey, may I come in for a moment?" Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. Nancy stepped inside, scanning the room the way a mother might when checking on a child she worried about. She set the plate on the counter, then turned to Evelyn with a sigh. "Sweetheart," she began, "I've lived in this neighborhood for 35 years. I've seen a lot, and I've heard a lot." She paused, "Including the things your husband says to you." A lump formed in Evelyn's throat. It's not." "It is," Nancy said gently but firmly. "And you don't have to lie to protect that man." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm not." "I know," Nancy said, "and that's why I need to show you something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. Evelyn stared at it, confused. "What is that?" Nancy exhaled, shoulders sinking with the weight of what she was about to reveal. "I've recorded things for months." She looked down, ashamed. "I didn't know if I should step in. I didn't know if it was my place. But I heard him yelling. I heard the names he called you. I heard things no husband should ever say. And I was afraid he'd escalate." Evelyn's heart thudded painfully. "You recorded him?" "Yes, not from inside your home. Only what carried through the walls or when he shouted on the porch. I know it sounds intrusive, but I was terrified something might happen to you." Nancy's voice cracked. "I couldn't just do nothing." Evelyn covered her mouth with her hand. Shock, grief, and something like gratitude flooded her all at once. Nancy continued, gentler now. "I've saved every file. Dates, timestamps, 27 recordings. Women's shelters told me they often can't help without evidence, so I made sure you'd have some." Evelyn felt her legs weaken. She sat down at the table. Nancy placed the USB in her hand, closing Evelyn's fingers around it. "This isn't just noise, sweetheart," Nancy whispered. "It's proof. Proof of what you've endured. Proof you're not imagining things. Proof he's dangerous." Evelyn stared down at the tiny device, the first piece of real protection she had held in years. Nancy placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you know. And you're not alone. Not anymore." Evelyn didn't trust her voice, but she nodded. Because deep down, she knew this small USB drive would soon become the crack that shattered Brandon's entire world. Evelyn waited until Brandon left the house that evening before she sat down at the kitchen table again. USB drive beside her, laptop open. Sunset cast a dull orange glow through the blinds, turning the cluttered room into a stage where she had no choice but to face the truth. Her heart thudded painfully as she clicked into the banking dashboard again, determined to understand the full extent of the damage. But nothing could have prepared her for what she found next. The first page of transactions looked familiar. The withdrawals, the hotel charges, the expensive gifts he had bought for Daisy. Those alone made her stomach twist. But then she saw something new. A flagged notice. It flashed yellow across the top of the page. Account under review. Suspicious activity detected. Her breath hitched. She clicked the notification. A list expanded. 6 items. 5 of the flags were labeled signature mismatch. 1 was labeled possible identity falsification. She felt cold. Brandon hadn't just taken out loans. He had attempted even more and failed, only because a bank employee noticed something off. She pulled up the PDFs from each flagged application. Her name appeared on all of them. Her signature forged again and again, sloppy in some places, frighteningly accurate in others. He even listed her as an independent investor with a fake annual income. Evelyn's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the laptop. This wasn't a husband who overspent. This was a husband who planned to bury her financially until she had no way out. A faint buzzing filled her ears as panic wrapped around her chest. She stood from the table, pacing the cramped kitchen, trying to steady her breathing. Her therapist once taught her techniques for reducing anxiety, back when she still had insurance, but she hadn't practiced them in years. In through the nose, out slowly, but the more she breathed, the worse it felt. Her future. Every dream, every possibility hung suspended over a cliff Brandon had dug under her feet. And then her phone buzzed, a text message. Evelyn wiped her eyes and checked the screen. A verification code from another bank. Use this code to complete your credit application. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't applied for anything. She clicked into the linked email account, one Brandon insisted she keep so he could monitor expenses. A new draft email sat unsent but filled in. A credit card application, under her name, for $15,000, pending his final click. He was doing it again. Right now. Today. While she stood in this kitchen trying not to fall apart, she felt something inside her snap. A fragile thread that had held her together through every insult, every humiliation, every day of pretending this marriage was still real. Her pulse hammered in her throat as she took a step back from the table. The room felt too small. The air too thin. She pressed her palm against her sternum, trying to breathe. And then she heard a faint sound, a soft knock at the door. Her breath caught. She froze, staring at the wooden frame as if it were a threat. It knocked again, gentler. "Evelyn?" It was Nancy's voice. "Sweetheart, are you home?" Relief washed through her so fast her knees buckled. She hurried to the door and opened it. Nancy stood with a flashlight and a concerned frown. "Your lights flickered again," she said quietly. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Evelyn nodded, unable to speak. Nancy stepped closer. "You look pale, dear. Did something else happen?" Evelyn didn't want to burden the older woman, but she couldn't hold it anymore. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He's still forging my name." Nancy's expression shifted, not shocked, but furious. "Then you need help. Real help." Evelyn tightened her grip on the doorframe. "I don't have anyone." Nancy squeezed her arm. "Yes, you do. And you need to reach out before this gets worse." Evelyn stared through the doorway at the dark street, empty and silent. Nancy was right. If she didn't make a move soon, Brandon would own her entire life. And just as that thought settled in her chest, her phone buzzed again with a message that would change everything. Evelyn stared at the new notification glowing on her cracked phone screen, her pulse thundering in her ears. It wasn't another bank alert. It wasn't Brandon. It wasn't a debt collector. It was a name she hadn't seen in 2 years. Alexander Reeves. For a moment, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. But no, the message preview was real. "Evelyn, are you safe?" Her breath caught. Hours earlier she had been on the bathroom floor, shaking, terrified, and desperate enough to scroll through her old contacts. She'd hovered over his name for a long time. Alexander wasn't just anyone from her past. He had been her mentor, her former manager, and the only person who ever believed she was destined for more than spreadsheets and conference calls. He once told her that she had a mind sharp enough to shape industries. She almost deleted his number 100 times after she quit her job to prioritize her marriage. But some part of her couldn't. Some part of her remembered the way he once told her during a late-night project, "If you ever need a way out of something, call me." 2 years had passed. She never expected him to answer, let alone respond instantly. Nancy stepped closer, peering at the phone. "Who is it, dear?" Evelyn swallowed. "Someone I used to work for." You should open it, Nancy urged gently. Her thumb hesitated above the screen, then tapped. His full message loaded. Evelyn, your name came up in a financial pattern our compliance team flagged. Something is wrong. If you're in danger, tell me right now. Her knees weakened. She leaned against the wall, gripping the phone. How does he know? Nancy frowned. What does he mean, financial pattern? Evelyn shook her head slowly. I don't know. But she did know. Alexander was a billionaire now, CEO of Reeves Technology, a company that handled high-level analytics across major financial institutions. If something involving her name triggered a system, it meant Brandon's forgery wasn't just sloppy, it was on the radar of very powerful people. Her phone buzzed again. Evelyn, say something. Her hands trembled. She typed slowly, erasing every sentence she tried. I'm fine. Delete. It's nothing. Delete. My husband. Delete. Finally, with a trembling inhale, she wrote, I think I'm in trouble. She almost deleted it too, but Nancy placed a warm hand on her shoulder. Send it, the older woman whispered, before you talk yourself out of it. So Evelyn hit send. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then his response came, give me your address. Now. Her heart stumbled. She typed it out with shaking fingers. As soon as she pressed send, Alexander replied, I'm dispatching my team. Don't leave the house. Don't talk to him. Don't sign anything. We'll handle everything. Evelyn pressed the phone to her chest, eyes stinging with tears she'd held in for years. She didn't understand why she felt so overwhelmed. Maybe because for the first time in forever, someone wasn't doubting her. Someone wasn't belittling her. Someone actually believed her. But the fear returned just as quickly. What if Brandon comes home before they get here? She whispered. Nancy looked toward the dark hallway behind her. Then you come to my house. You'll stay with me. He's not going to lay a finger on you. Evelyn nodded, though her stomach knotted with dread. She wasn't afraid of Brandon hitting her. He had never done that. His weapon wasn't fists. It was control, manipulation, intimidation. And she knew he would explode the moment he realized the financial mess he created was starting to unravel. Her phone buzzed again. This time from Alexander. Evelyn, listen carefully. What your husband has done is serious. You are not safe with him. Help is on the way. Her throat closed. Her life, her trapped, suffocating cage, had just been spotted by someone powerful enough to tear it open. But she didn't yet understand the magnitude of what she'd set in motion. Because Alexander Reeves wasn't sending a text. He was sending an entire storm toward Brandon's carefully constructed lies. And before the night ended, the first vehicle of that storm would arrive at her door. The house was silent, except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock. Small sounds that suddenly felt too loud, too sharp, as if the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, her phone face down, her thoughts spinning like a storm she could no longer contain. Nancy stayed beside her, knitting needles in hand, but not truly knitting, watching Evelyn with the steady vigilance of someone who had seen far too many women suffer in silence. What time did he say his team would arrive? Nancy asked softly. He didn't, Evelyn whispered. He just said they're on their way. Nancy nodded, as if that answer was enough. Then we wait. But waiting was torture. Every passing second invited new fears. What if Brandon came home early? What if he sensed something was wrong? What if he exploded the way he always did when he felt cornered? As if the universe wanted to test her resolve, headlights suddenly flashed across the living room wall. Evelyn's breath caught. Oh God, is that him? Nancy stood and peeked through the curtain. No, she whispered. Those aren't his lights. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop in front of the house. Windows tinted, engine low and expensive sounding. Then another SUV pulled up behind it. Nancy stepped back, eyebrows raised. Sweetheart, I think your friend sent more than just a car. Before Evelyn could respond, 3 figures stepped out of the first vehicle. 2 men in tailored dark suits, and 1 woman with a sleek blazer and a leather briefcase. They didn't move like debt collectors. They didn't move like police. They moved like people who belonged in Manhattan boardrooms and federal hearings. Evelyn's pulse hammered. A firm knock rattled the door. Nancy placed a reassuring hand on her back. It's okay, honey. Go on. With trembling fingers, Evelyn opened the door. The woman at the front offered a calm, professional smile. Mrs. Hart? Yes, Evelyn whispered. I'm Lydia Shaw, Senior Legal Counsel for Reeves Technology. Evelyn's breath hitched. Reeves Technology, Alexander's company. She felt her chest tighten with disbelief. Lydia continued, her voice steady but urgent. We received an internal alert tied to fraudulent credit applications under your name. Our CEO, Mr. Reeves, immediately instructed us to make contact and ensure your safety. One of the men stepped forward slightly. We're here to extract you from any immediate threat, secure your documents, and provide you with temporary protection until our investigation is complete. Evelyn blinked rapidly. Protection? I don't understand. Lydia lifted her briefcase. Mrs. Hart, based on the evidence we've reviewed so far, your husband has committed multiple federal offenses: credit fraud, identity falsification, signature forgery, potential tax evasion. These actions put you at enormous legal and financial risk. Nancy let out a quiet gasp. Evelyn felt the floor tilt beneath her. Lydia lowered her voice. Mr. Reeves is deeply concerned for your well-being. He asked me to tell you personally. You are not alone. You do not have to handle this yourself. Something inside Evelyn cracked. Not in pain, but in relief. She didn't know her body could still feel. She swallowed hard, gripping the doorframe. I didn't know who else to call, she admitted. You called the right person, Lydia said gently. As if on cue, the second SUV door opened, and another team retrieved secure folders, a portable printer, and a shockproof case. Lydia continued, we need to collect every document related to your husband's finances, your joint accounts, loan papers, anything he could have used. Once we have it, we'll move you to a protected location. Evelyn's voice trembled. Protected? Like witness protection? In a way, Lydia said. Your husband may react unpredictably when he realizes his actions are being investigated. Our priority is your safety. Nancy let out a proud little huff. I told you someone needed to step in. But Evelyn wasn't fully listening anymore, because for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she lost forever. A lifeline, not a rescue, a chance. Lydia opened her briefcase. Mrs. Hart, shall we begin? Evelyn inhaled shakily, then nodded. The storm had arrived on her doorstep, and Brandon had no idea. A hurricane was forming with his name on every page. The plaza's grand ballroom shimmered beneath 1,000 crystal lights, every chandelier glowing like suspended galaxies. Velvet drapes framed panoramic windows overlooking Central Park, and a soft symphony floated through the air, violins warming up for the charity gala that would gather New York's most influential figures. It was elegance, wealth, power, and a test Evelyn never imagined she'd face. She stood before the floor-length mirror in her suite, heart thundering. The deep sapphire gown hugged her waist, its satin fabric flowing like water each time she took a breath. A stylist, one of Alexander's, had created soft waves through her dark hair, pinned just enough to reveal her neckline. Ma'am, the stylist whispered, stepping back, you look like someone who survived a storm and learned to command the sky afterward. Evelyn swallowed hard. Compliments still felt foreign. A knock. Then Alexander's voice. Evelyn, we're almost ready. Her pulse jumped. He entered, dressed in a black tuxedo, sharp lines, understated elegance, a confidence so subtle it radiated more than any spotlight could. His eyes lifted, and the moment he saw her, he froze. Wow, he said softly. Evelyn, you look incredible. Heat rose in her cheeks. She glanced away, unsure how to hold the weight of his gaze. I wasn't sure I could pull this off. His expression softened. You didn't pull it off, you owned it. They arrived at the gala in a sleek Mercedes S-Class, escorted past velvet ropes and camera flashes. People turned, whispered. Not because she was with Alexander, he always caused a stir, but because there was something magnetic about the woman at his side, something quietly powerful. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with conversations. CEOs, philanthropists, journalists, politicians. Crystal glasses clinked. Waiters passed trays of champagne. A photographer snapped a photo of Alexander with Evelyn before either could protest. She tensed, but Alexander placed a reassuring hand at her back. Tonight isn't about publicity. It's about you standing in a room you were always meant to belong in. She nodded, though nerves fluttered like trapped birds inside her chest. They moved through the crowd, accepting greetings. Many people recognized Alexander. Some recognized Evelyn from the viral clip. They offered her soft smiles, sympathetic nods, encouragement she didn't expect. Then someone else entered the ballroom, someone who wasn't invited. Brandon. He wore an ill-fitting suit, hair combed too aggressively, desperation clinging to him like sweat. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Evelyn, radiant, confident, alive. His jaw tightened. Rage twisted across his face. He charged forward. Alexander sensed the shift in the room before Evelyn did. His hand slid protectively to her waist. "Stay close to me," he murmured. Brandon shoved past a server, nearly knocking over a tray of champagne. People gasped. A security guard stepped forward, but Brandon pushed ahead. "Evelyn!" he barked. Every head turned. Evelyn's breath caught. Brandon reached them, face flushed, eyes wild. "How dare you show your face here with him?" Alexander stepped between them instantly. "You need to leave." "Shut up," Brandon snapped. "This is between me and my wife." Alexander corrected coolly. "And she doesn't want to speak to you," Brandon sneered. "She's using you. All of this is an act. She stole my files, my accounts. She's manipulating you." Evelyn felt the old instinct, to shrink, to lower her gaze, to apologize for something she didn't do. Her hands trembled, her throat tightened, but then she saw her reflection in a nearby mirror. The gown, the poise, the woman she was becoming. She stepped out from behind Alexander. Brandon blinked. He wasn't expecting that. Her voice was calm. "You forged my signature. You drained my savings. You cheated on me. You tried to destroy my future. You hurt me in every way a man can hurt a woman without leaving a bruise." Whispers rippled across the ballroom. Brandon's face twisted. That's not." "And now the authorities know," she continued. "Your company knows. Your mistress knows. The whole internet knows." Alexander stood proudly behind her, silent and strong. Brandon sputtered. "You can't do this to me." She met his gaze with a steady calm that shook him more than anger ever could. "I didn't do this to you," she said softly. "You did it to yourself." Security stepped forward. "Sir, you need to leave." Brandon lunged, one last desperate grasp for control. But someone grabbed his arm, a soft, bitter voice. "Don't touch her." Brandon spun. Daisy. Her eyes were cold, her expression hollowed by consequences she didn't think would find her. And then she said the words that shattered him. "I told the investigators everything." Brandon's face drained of color. Security seized him, dragging him toward the exit as cameras flashed, capturing the fall of a man who thought he could bury the woman he underestimated. Evelyn watched him go, not with hatred, with closure. Real, irreversible closure. And Alexander whispered in her ear, "Welcome back to your life, Evelyn." The ballroom slowly dissolved behind Evelyn as she stepped onto the wide terrace overlooking Central Park. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of distant rain and the faint hum of the city below. Soft lights traced the terrace railings, casting a warm golden glow across the stone floor. Inside, the gala continued, music swelling, glasses clinking. But out here, everything felt still. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the flood of emotions she had kept locked up for years. Brandon being dragged out, Daisy turning against him, the whispers, the cameras. It was all too much. She leaned against the railing and closed her eyes, taking a shaky breath. "I thought I'd find you here." Evelyn opened her eyes. Alexander stood a few feet away, coat draped over his arm, bow tie slightly loosened from the chaos earlier. His expression was soft, gentle in a way that made her feel seen, not scrutinized. "Are you okay?" he asked. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "I think so. Just overwhelmed." "That was a lot," he agreed. "But you handled yourself better than most CEOs I've seen in crisis." She smiled faintly. "I wasn't trying to be strong. I just couldn't let him define me anymore." Alexander stepped closer, but not too close, leaving her space, as always. "You took back your voice tonight." Evelyn looked out over the city lights. "For years, I thought if I stayed quiet, things would get better. That if I was patient, he'd change. That if I worked harder, he'd love me the way I needed." Alexander's jaw tightened slightly. "You were surviving." "Barely." Her voice wavered. "I lost myself in him." "You found yourself again," he said, "piece by piece." She looked up at him then, truly looked. Under the terrace lights, he didn't appear like a billionaire CEO or the man who rescued her in a helicopter. He looked like a man carrying deep understanding, maybe even admiration for the woman standing before him. "Alexander," she began, unsure of her next words. But before she could continue, the terrace door burst open. Evelyn's heart plummeted. Brandon, freed from security somehow, disheveled, eyes bloodshot with rage and humiliation. No more designer arrogance, just a desperate man drowning in consequences he never expected. "Evelyn!" he roared, voice cracking. Alexander immediately stepped between them. "How did you get up here?" Brandon ignored him entirely, eyes locked on Evelyn. "You think you can ruin me? You think you can walk away after everything I gave you?" Evelyn straightened her back. "You didn't give me anything. You took everything." Brandon's face twisted. "I made you who you are." "No," she said quietly. "You made me smaller than who I was." Alexander's voice turned deadly calm. "Security is on their way." But Brandon lunged forward anyway. Evelyn didn't shrink back. She didn't flinch. She didn't fear him. Instead, she stepped forward, raising a hand, not to strike him, but to stop him with nothing but her presence. "Brandon," she said, voice steady as marble, "look at what you've become. Look at what you're doing." He froze mid-step, chest heaving. "You lied. You cheated. You stole my identity. You tried to ruin my future, and now the world knows." Her voice softened, not with pity, but with finality. "This is the part where you accept that the consequences belong to you." Brandon's breath stuttered, fury shifting into something emptier. Something defeated. "You were supposed to be mine," he whispered. "I was never yours to break," she replied. Security flooded onto the terrace. Brandon didn't fight this time. He just stared at her, hollow, before being led away for good. The door closed. Silence settled. Evelyn's legs nearly gave out, but Alexander reached her just in time, steady hands catching her elbows. "It's over," he murmured. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I didn't know I had that strength in me," she whispered. Alexander smiled, slow, reverent. "You had it all along." The wind swept her hair gently as she exhaled, the kind of breath that belongs to someone stepping into a new life. The city sparkled beneath them, a world reborn, and she finally understood. She hadn't just survived Brandon. She had defeated him, not with revenge, not with cruelty, but with truth. Pure, undeniable truth. And next came the life she deserved. 2 days after the gala, after Brandon was removed from the premises and formally taken into custody for questioning, Evelyn found herself in the passenger seat of Alexander's SUV. The city faded behind them, skyscrapers shrinking into the horizon as the vehicle swept along the highway toward the coast. Trees lined the winding road, sun filtering through branches like soft gold. Evelyn watched the shifting landscape quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "Where are we going?" she asked, though the calm in her voice surprised even her. Alexander glanced over, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Someplace peaceful, somewhere your past can't reach you." She felt warmth gather in her chest. "Is this business related?" "No," he said, voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. "This is for you." The air changed as they entered the Hamptons, fresh, salty, carrying whispers of ocean waves even miles before the water came into view. Grand homes appeared behind carefully trimmed hedges, sprawling lawns, white fences glowing in the sunlight. But Alexander didn't stop at any of the mansions. He drove farther, to a quiet shoreline where dunes rolled like soft hills, and a wooden house stood against the horizon, painted a calm shade of pale gray. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't intimidating. It looked safe. Evelyn exhaled shakily. "Is this yours?" "It's a refuge," he said. "I bought it years ago, but I only come when I need clarity. I thought you might need some too." She turned to him, eyes glistening. "You keep doing that." "What? Seeing me?" Her voice cracked. "Even when I don't know how to be seen." He didn't reply. Instead, he led her toward the house. The scent of seagrass and cedar drifted around them. Inside, the rooms were warm and welcoming. Beige linens, soft rugs, a fireplace waiting for flame. Large windows framed the ocean, waves kissing the shore in slow, steady rhythms. Evelyn stepped to the glass, fingertips brushing the cool surface. "It's beautiful." "You're safe here," Alexander said quietly behind her. She turned. He stood only a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable but full of something heavy, admiration, worry, longing. "Evelyn," he said softly, "you've been fighting for months, maybe years. You don't have to be strong here." Her throat tightened. "What if I don't know how to stop fighting?" "Then let me help you remember." He didn't reach for her. He didn't force closeness. He just stood there, steady, patient, someone who understood the fragility beneath her strength. She walked to the couch and sat, pulling her knees up slightly. Alexander lit the fireplace, then joined her at a polite distance. The warmth glowed across her skin, loosening knots inside her chest she didn't know she'd been carrying. After a long silence, Evelyn spoke. I used to imagine a life like this. Quiet, peaceful, somewhere I didn't have to apologize for taking up space. You never should have apologized for existing, Alexander said. Not to him, not to anyone. Her eyes fell to her hands. I wasted years. No, he countered gently. You survived years, and you came out with more strength than anyone had the right to expect. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not of pain but release. Alexander reached into a drawer and handed her a small leather notebook. This is where I write ideas, he said. Dreams. Reminders. Maybe it's time you wrote yours. She traced the cover with trembling fingers. Dreams, she whispered. I forgot I used to have those. He gave a soft smile. Start with one. She opened the notebook. The first page was blank, pure white, waiting. I want a life where I'm respected, she said. Another tear. I want work that matters. A breath. I want peace. A pause. And maybe... She looked at him. Someone who truly cares. Alexander held her gaze, eyes reflecting the flicker of the fire. You deserve all of that, he said quietly, and more. The ocean crashed softly outside, steady and forgiving. Evelyn felt her heart open just an inch wider, just enough to let something new in. But she didn't know that her next words would change everything between them. The sun was beginning to set over the Hamptons coastline, painting the sky in soft streaks of rose gold and lavender. The ocean outside Alexander's quiet refuge house rolled in gentle waves, as if the world itself had taken a deep, calming breath. Evelyn stood near the window, wrapped in a light sweater he'd found for her, the warmth of the fireplace brushing her back. She felt lighter. Not healed, not fully, but lighter than she had in years. Alexander stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching her with that same patient attention he'd shown since the moment she'd reached out. What were you about to say earlier? He asked gently. Evelyn hesitated, fingers tracing the edge of the notebook he'd given her. I'm not sure, she said honestly. Or maybe I'm just scared to say it. He stepped forward, but only halfway, giving her room. You don't have to be scared of me. I know, she whispered, and she did. Deeply. She turned toward him fully. I spent so many years twisting myself into someone else's idea of a wife, someone small, silent, grateful for scraps of affection. I don't even know how to want something real. Alexander's expression softened. You already do. You're just learning to say it out loud. Her breath trembled. I want a life where I'm not afraid, a life where my voice matters, where I can grow instead of shrink. You will, he said. You already are. And maybe, she paused again, gathering courage like fragile glass in her hands. Maybe I want to share that life with someone who sees me for who I am, who doesn't want to control me, who doesn't break me when I'm vulnerable. He took a slow, measured step closer. Evelyn. Her heart pounded. I'm not asking for anything now, she said quickly. I'm not ready. I know that, but I need you to know that. Tears welled in her eyes. You gave me back my voice, my work, my safety, my sense of worth. And I don't know if that's love or just the beginning of something. But it's real. Silence. Heavy, tender, electric. Alexander's jaw tightened, not with frustration but with emotion he was clearly trying to hold steady. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move, to choose. She didn't move away. He brushed a single tear from her cheek with the back of his fingers. Evelyn, I've admired your strength since the day you walked into my office years ago with your ideas and your stubborn brilliance. But now, after everything you've survived, he shook his head softly. I don't want your gratitude. I don't want your dependency. I want your truth. Whatever it is, whatever it becomes. Her breath caught. And if that truth becomes you? A faint smile touched his lips, warm, disarming. Then I'll be here, when you're ready. Her chest tightened, but not painfully, beautifully, like a heart learning to beat again. He stepped back, not pushing, not demanding, just giving space. And somehow that made her step forward. Alexander, she whispered, taking his hand gently, thank you for not rushing me, for not expecting anything, for letting me choose. He lifted her hand to his lips but didn't kiss it, just held it there, close. Choice is something you were denied for too long. Now it belongs to you again. A soft knock echoed from the entrance. One of Alexander's assistants stood there. Sir, the DA's office just called. They filed charges. Brandon is being held without bail. Evelyn inhaled sharply. Justice. Not vengeance. Not anger. Justice. It didn't erase the past, but it freed her future. When the assistant left, Evelyn leaned against the doorway, letting the weight of it settle. Tears slipped down her face, this time not from fear, but relief. "It's over," she whispered. Alexander moved beside her, close enough for warmth, but not possession. "It's the end of one story," he said softly, "and the beginning of whatever you choose next." Evelyn turned to him. The ocean wind brushed through the open window, carrying a sense of possibility she'd never imagined she'd feel again. "I choose me," she said firmly. "And when you're ready," he replied, voice warm enough to melt the last shards of her old life, "I hope you'll choose more." She smiled, really smiled. For the first time in years, the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to build, something to embrace, something she might even share with a man who had shown her what respect and love truly looked like. As the last rays of sunlight kissed the water, Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Her story wasn't ending, it was finally beginning. So that's it, the story has come to an end. And if you are still here, listening until this very moment, then something in Evelyn's journey must have touched your heart in a way only truth can. Maybe you saw a piece of yourself in her silence, or in her courage. Maybe you've survived something you never talked about. Maybe you're learning, just like she did, that walking away isn't weakness, it's the beginning of choosing yourself. The Stoics used to say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength begins there. Evelyn's story reminds us that healing starts when we stop shrinking for people who cannot love us right. And as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Her suffering didn't break her, it delivered her to a better version of herself. So, my wonderful friend watching this, if her story stirred something in you, don't ignore it. You deserve peace, you deserve respect, you deserve a life where your voice matters. And if this journey moved you even a little, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because somewhere out there, another person needs to hear a story that reminds them of their worth. Just like this one reminded you. The sun had barely risen when the neighborhood began to stir with whispers. It started as a low vibration, so faint Evelyn thought it was her imagination. She stood outside with Lydia and the legal team, clutching the small binder of evidence to her chest. Nancy hovered protectively nearby, arms crossed, watching every passing car like it might be Brandon. The morning air was cold enough to sting her lungs. Dew clung to the grass, glittering under the pale light. Evelyn's nerves tightened with every second. Lydia had said someone else was coming. A final layer of transport, she called it, but she never said what kind of transport. The ground vibrated again, this time stronger. Nancy frowned. "Is that a—" Before she could finish, a powerful gust of air whipped through the street. Leaves scattered. A trash bin toppled over. Dogs began barking up and down the block. Then the unmistakable sound filled the sky. Thump, 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 a deep, thunderous rhythm that made Evelyn's breath freeze. Lydia stepped forward, raising her voice above the growing roar. "That would be our extraction." Evelyn's eyes widened. "Extraction? I thought you meant a car." Lydia gave a small, restrained smile. "Mr. Reeves doesn't take chances." A helicopter, sleek, obsidian black, with the Reeves Technology emblem near the cockpit, appeared over the rooftops, cutting through the sky like something out of a movie. It descended slowly, its blades slicing the air with violent precision. Curtains flew open all along the street. Porch doors swung wide. Neighbors poured out with phones raised, filming, gasping. "Good Lord," Nancy whispered, clutching her sweater. The helicopter hovered over the empty lot behind the row of houses, blasting wind across the entire street. Evelyn shielded her face as dust and leaves swirled around her. The rotors thundered louder, rattling windows, shaking the ground. People gathered along the sidewalks, wide-eyed, whispering, recording. "Is that for her? Who is she? What's happening? She leaving her husband? Is that a billionaire's helicopter?" And then, there he was. The side door slid open, and Alexander Reeves stepped out. He didn't look like a billionaire stepping off a private aircraft. He looked like a man with a mission. Dark suit, white shirt, no tie. His expression focused, controlled. But the second his eyes landed on Evelyn, everything in his posture softened. Evelyn felt her breath catch in her throat. He leapt down from the helicopter stairs as if the whipping wind didn't touch him. 2 security agents followed, scanning the area with practiced precision. Lydia stepped aside, allowing him a clear path. Alexander approached her slowly, the noise around them dimming in Evelyn's ears until all she could hear was her own heartbeat. "Evelyn," he said, voice steady despite the chaos, "you're safe now." Safe. The word cracked something open inside her, but Brandon's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "What the hell is going on?" He stormed out of the house wearing yesterday's wrinkled shirt, hair sticking up, eyes wild with confusion. Cameras whipped toward him instantly. Alexander didn't flinch. He simply stepped in front of Evelyn, shielding her without even thinking. Lydia turned sharply. "Mr. Colwood, please stay back." Brandon ignored her completely. "Why is there a helicopter? Why are these people here? Evelyn, what did you do?" He lunged forward. Nancy jumped. The neighbors gasped. A security agent stepped between them, solid as a wall. "Back up, sir. Do not approach her." Brandon's face twisted in rage. "You can't take my wife." Alexander's expression hardened, cold, sharp. "Your wife is leaving of her own free will, and you will not speak to her like that again." Brandon scoffed. "Who do you think you are?" Alexander didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "I'm the man who is going to make sure she gets her life back." Cameras flashed. Gasps rippled through the street. Evelyn swallowed hard, tears filling her eyes, not from fear but from the shock of being defended so fiercely, so publicly for the first time in years. Alexander extended his hand to her. "Let's go," he said softly. "You don't ever have to come back here." Evelyn hesitated only 1 second. Then she placed her hand in his. Together, they walked toward the helicopter as the entire neighborhood watched in stunned silence. Brandon called after her one last time, but his voice was drowned out by the rising roar of the blades. Because at that moment, Evelyn Hart was finally rising above everything that once tried to break her. The moment Evelyn stepped into the helicopter, the world outside blurred into a whirlwind of wind, dust, and distant shouting. The rotors thundered above her, vibrating through her bones, but inside the cabin it felt strangely calm. Dim lights, leather seats, the faint scent of cedar and jet fuel. A place built for decisions far bigger than the life she'd been living. Alexander followed her in, closing the door behind them. The noise outside muffled instantly, leaving only a low hum. He gave a brief nod to the pilot, then turned toward her with an expression she hadn't seen in years. Concern, real concern, not the performative kind Brandon used when it benefited him. "Sit," he said gently, guiding her toward one of the seats. "You're shaking." She hadn't realized she was. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she fastened the belt, breath shallow. Everything happening felt impossible, like she'd stepped out of her life and into someone else's movie. Alexander knelt in front of her, lowering himself to eye level. He didn't touch her, but his presence was grounding, like gravity shifting back into place. "You did the right thing calling me." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I didn't know if you'd even remember me." He inhaled softly, almost offended by the idea. "Evelyn, I could never forget you." The helicopter lifted off the ground, rising above the tiny New Jersey neighborhood that had been her cage. Evelyn glanced out the window. The street grew smaller, the houses shrinking into little squares. She saw Brandon on the pavement, looking up, shouting something that was swallowed by the roar of the blades. It was the first time she'd ever seen him look powerless, and the sight stunned her. Alexander followed her gaze. "He won't be able to touch you again," he said quietly. "Not financially, not legally, not emotionally." She swallowed hard. "He forged my name on so many things. I don't know how to fix any of it. That's why we're here." His voice was calm, unwavering. "My legal team is already pulling the full history of every account tied to your name. They'll trace every forged document. You won't carry his debt. You won't carry his crimes." Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. Freedom felt foreign, like a language she once knew but hadn't spoken in years. He continued, softer now. "You never should have been in that house, not with a man who used your loyalty as leverage." She opened her eyes, meeting his. "Why did you come yourself? You could have just sent someone." Alexander held her gaze for a long moment. "Because when someone like you reaches out, you show up. That's what decent people do." Her breath caught. No one had said anything like that to her in so long. The helicopter veered left, Manhattan's skyline emerging through the morning haze, glass towers catching the sunrise, the city pulsing with life. It looked like a memory she'd buried, now rising from the fog. "You're taking me to the city?" she asked. "For now," he said. "You'll be staying in one of my secured penthouses, temporary until we sort everything out." "A penthouse?" she echoed, overwhelmed. He gave a faint smile. "Think of it as a safe place to breathe." Evelyn exhaled shakily. The skyline shimmered underneath them, a glittering reminder of the life she once dreamed of, and the person she once was, a person she might still be. Alexander stood and sat across from her, fastening his own belt. "Once we land, we'll go over everything at your pace. No pressure, no rush." "What if I fall apart?" she whispered. His eyes softened. "Then you fall apart, and we'll help you stand back up." The helicopter cut through the clouds toward Manhattan, sunlight reflecting off its windows. Down below, Brandon's world was crumbling. Up here, Evelyn's was finally beginning, and fate was about to give her far more than freedom. It was preparing her for a comeback no one, especially Brandon, ever saw coming. The helicopter touched down on a private rooftop in Midtown, its skids settling onto polished steel with a gentle thud. As the blades slowed, Evelyn felt her heartbeat slowly sink with the diminishing roar, like her body was trying to catch up with everything happening around her. When the door opened, crisp Manhattan air rushed in, cool, sharp, electric. She hadn't breathed this air in years. Alexander stepped out first, offering his hand. She hesitated only 1 second before taking it. His grip was steady, reassuring. He led her across the rooftop toward a private elevator already waiting with its doors open. The moment they stepped inside, the elevator descended smoothly, soundless except for faint city vibrations humming beneath them. Evelyn stared at the floor numbers ticking down. Her reflection in the mirrored walls startled her, a woman standing on the edge of collapse and rebirth at the same time. "I know this is overwhelming," Alexander said, watching her gently. "But you're about to learn the truth about everything he's been doing." Her voice cracked. "I'm afraid of the truth." "That's because you're used to living in someone else's version of it," he said softly. "Now you get your own." The doors opened into a sleek, glass-walled conference room inside Reeves Technology headquarters. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind it, towering and glittering like a cathedral of ambition. A long table sat in the center, and around it, waiting, were 4 members of Alexander's legal and financial intelligence team. They rose when she entered. "Mrs. Hart," one of them said respectfully, "we've been analyzing the activity tied to your identity. There's something you need to see." Evelyn sat, fingers twisting nervously. The lead investigator, a man named Carter Hale, clicked a remote. A screen brightened, displaying a timeline of Brandon's actions. Carter spoke carefully. "Your husband didn't begin forging your name recently. He started 18 months ago." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What?" Carter nodded. "We traced the earliest forged signature to a small loan he took out to cover gambling losses. That loan snowballed into bigger ones when he started living beyond his means. Hotel weekends, designer watches, luxury dinners." Another investigator, a woman named Priya, pulled up additional files. Based on the pattern, Brandon wasn't acting alone at first. Someone advised him how to manipulate the system. Evelyn blinked. "Who?" Priya pressed a button. A photo appeared on the screen. Daisy Morgan. Evelyn felt her jaw loosen. "His mistress?" Priya nodded. "She worked part-time at a financial services kiosk before joining his dealership. She has a history of assisting clients with bypassing identification checks. We believe she taught Brandon how to forge your documents." Evelyn felt cold all over. Betrayal layered upon betrayal. But that wasn't the worst part. Carter clicked again, revealing another screen highlighting red flags. "Mr. Colwood didn't just forge loans. He attempted to create an offshore account under your name." Evelyn's breath halted. "Why? What for?" Alexander leaned forward, voice low but controlled. "To prepare for divorce." Silence stabbed the room. Alexander's eyes locked onto hers, steady, unwavering. "He planned to leave you broke, Evelyn. Completely. He wanted you legally responsible for his debts." Her throat tightened painfully. The truth she had dreaded was worse than she dared imagine. Carter continued. "He also claimed on one of the applications that you had a pending inheritance of $200,000. That's fraud of a serious to federal level." Evelyn shook her head, tears brimming. I don't have anyone. There is no inheritance. We know, Priya said. That's why it's criminal. Alexander reached across the table, resting his hand lightly near hers. Not touching, just close enough to anchor her. Everything he's done is unraveling, and it ends here. She swallowed, voice trembling. What happens next? Carter answered. We're preparing a full report for federal authorities, but first, we need you protected. Once Brandon realizes we're building a case, he may panic. Men like him often do. Evelyn's pulse spiked. He'll come after me. Alexander shook his head. He won't get close. I'll make sure of that. The room fell into a heavy silence. Then Priya added gently, There's one more thing. We discovered an email draft Brandon wrote to Daisy last week. She clicked. Words appeared across the screen, cold, calculated. Once I get her signature on the last form, I'll be free. She'll be ruined, but who cares? She's been dead weight for years. Evelyn covered her mouth with shaking hands. The team said nothing. She didn't need them to. The message was clear. Brandon hadn't just wanted her dependent. He wanted her destroyed. Slowly, painfully, irrevocably. And now, the investigation was about to turn everything he built against him. The black SUV glided through Manhattan like it belonged to every lane it entered. Evelyn sat in the back seat beside Alexander, her binder of evidence resting on her lap, clutched like a shield she finally knew how to use. The city outside moved in glittering streaks. Fifth Avenue boutiques glowing like constellations, morning commuters rushing past, yellow cabs honking in chaotic harmony. It felt unreal. 2 days ago she was clipping coupons and reheating leftover pasta. Now she was being escorted past Central Park in a vehicle with bulletproof windows. Alexander glanced over at her, studying her carefully. The way she held her breath, the stiffness in her shoulders, how small she made herself in the corner of the seat. You don't have to be afraid here, he said gently. A shaky exhale escaped her. I'm not used to any of this. That's okay. He paused. You don't have to get used to it. You just need a place where you're safe. The SUV turned into a private driveway that wrapped around the iconic facade of the Plaza Hotel. Its gold accents gleamed beneath the morning light, the red-carpeted entrance already lined with staff in crisp uniforms. A doorman stepped forward as the car stopped. Evelyn blinked. The plaza? Alexander, this is too much. It's temporary, he reassured her. A few days, maybe a week. You'll have privacy, security, and space to breathe. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. She was too tired to argue with safety. Inside, the lobby embraced her with warm lighting and marble floors polished to a mirror shine. A soft classical melody floated from distant speakers. For a moment, she felt like she was walking through a place meant for someone else, a woman who hadn't spent years being yelled at over burnt toast and forgotten laundry. The elevator ride to the suite was silent, but not uncomfortable. When the doors opened, Evelyn stepped into a world that stole her breath. A full-floor suite. Cream-colored walls, gold accents, velvet drapes, a sweeping view of Central Park. A dining table set for 8. A living room draped in soft afternoon light. A bedroom with a 4-poster bed so large it looked like it belonged in a castle. It was the opposite of everything Brandon had ever allowed her to have. This is yours, Alexander said behind her. For as long as you need it. Evelyn swallowed hard. I don't know how to exist in a place like this. He stepped forward, but not too close. You exist. That's enough. Her eyes burned with a mixture of awe and grief. She walked to the window, looking down at the city she had once belonged to, then abandoned for a man who tried to steal every piece of her life. Now she was back, but not as the woman she once was. A soft knock sounded at the door. A hotel attendant entered with a tray, herbal tea, fresh fruit, warm croissants. Compliments of Mr. Reeves, he said before leaving. Evelyn stared at the tray, the steam rising gently from the teapot. She couldn't remember the last time someone cared whether she ate. Then Alexander spoke quietly from the doorway. There's something you need to know, he said. Brandon tried to access your email this morning. Our cybersecurity team blocked him. Her blood ran cold. He's still trying? He won't get far, Alexander assured her. But you should prepare yourself. Men like him don't give up control easily. I know, she whispered. He stepped closer, voice softening. But you're not alone anymore. Whatever your next step is, we take it together. The word together landed in her chest like warmth seeping into frozen bones. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt the faintest flicker of something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. She sank onto the edge of the bed, wrapped her arms around herself, and let out a trembling breath. Brandon's world was unraveling. Hers was beginning again, and she had no idea that the next days in this suite would blossom into a transformation he never saw coming. The next morning arrived quietly inside the Plaza suite, sunlight spilling across the white duvet like a soft invitation to begin again. For the first time in years, Evelyn woke without flinching, without listening instinctively for Brandon's footsteps or tone of voice. She lay still, absorbing the silence, its weight, its gentleness. Then the memories returned. The helicopter, the investigation, Alexander's hand reaching for hers, her entire life shifting in a single night. She pushed herself upright, heart pounding. Today mattered. Today she had to face whatever the world needed from her, now that the truth was out. A soft knock came at the door. "Evelyn?" Alexander's voice carried through gently, never intrusive. "May I come in?" She hesitated, old habits, but then said, "Yes." He entered, dressed in a crisp navy suit, holding a slim MacBook Pro and a stack of printed files. He wasn't smiling, exactly, but there was something warm in his eyes, a steadiness that felt strangely like home. "I thought," he said, placing the items on the small dining table, "it might be time to let you see what you can still do." She blinked. "You mean work?" "I mean," he corrected softly, "remind yourself who you were before someone convinced you to shrink." Her stomach tightened with something between dread and longing. He opened the laptop. A dashboard loaded, numbers, charts, financial patterns, her old world. The language she once spoke fluently. "I want your perspective on this company," he said, sliding a folder toward her. "A small retail brand. They're drowning. But I think they have potential." She shook her head. "Alexander, I haven't worked in 2 years. And?" He pulled out a chair for her. "Talent doesn't evaporate, it waits." Her breath trembled, but she sat. At first her fingers hovered uncertainly over the trackpad. She clicked one tab, then another. Her heartbeat synced with the rhythm of shifting data. She leaned closer. Her mind began to make connections, patterns she used to detect instantly. She didn't even realize she was working until Alexander spoke. "Evelyn," he murmured, "you're glowing." Heat rose to her cheeks. She hadn't heard that word, not sincerely, in years. She cleared her throat. "Their overhead is killing them, their supply chain is inefficient, and their marketing is a mess. But they do have loyal repeat customers." Her mind accelerated, old instincts taking over. If they streamline their distribution and pivot toward digital, they could triple their retention rate. Alexander's lips curved slowly. "That's what I thought." She looked up sharply. "You already knew?" "I wanted to see if you still had the instinct." He leaned back, arms crossed, admiration unmistakable. "You do." A warm shock ran through her chest. She hadn't realized how badly she needed someone, anyone, to acknowledge her ability again. "All right," he said, tapping the folder. "Then we'll call this your first consulting assignment, if you want it." Evelyn swallowed hard. "If I want it?" "Alexander, I don't even know who I am anymore." He met her eyes carefully. "Then let's rediscover her, one step at a time." She looked back at the screen, its glowing graphs reflecting against her face. She recognized the feeling rising inside her, strength. The kind that had been smothered under Brandon's voice for years. She whispered, almost to herself, "I remember this part of me." "Good," he said softly, "because the world needs her back." Her phone buzzed suddenly, an email from the legal team. She opened it, a document attached, a draft of her formal separation from Brandon, and a note, "We have enough evidence to protect you. You're ready when you are." Her chest tightened. The past and future collided inside her like two storms meeting. She looked at Alexander. He was watching her with unshakable calm. "You don't have to sign today," he said. "You don't have to decide anything today. Just know you have options now. Real ones." Evelyn nodded slowly, gripping the edge of the laptop. She wasn't just safe. She was capable, valuable, alive. And as she stared at the rising skyline outside the window, she felt something shift inside her, the quiet, powerful rebirth of a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. Evelyn didn't expect the world to find out. She didn't expect strangers to learn her name, her story, or the humiliation she endured. But the universe has a strange way of exposing the truth, especially when a woman has been silenced for far too long. It began on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. She was in the plaza suite, reviewing documents for her first consulting assignment. Alexander had stepped out for a meeting, leaving her with Earl Grey tea, soft classical music, and, unexpectedly, peace. For the first time in years, her mind felt sharp, focused. She almost forgot how good it felt to be competent. Then her phone dinged. A message from Nancy. "Sweetheart, are you seeing what's happening online?" Evelyn frowned and opened Twitter. The first thing she saw was a video with more than 300,000 views. Title: Wife tries to leave abusive husband and a billionaire comes to get her. Her stomach dropped. She clicked. The video opened with the rumbling sound of the helicopter descending over the quiet suburban street. Neighbors could be heard shouting in shock. Dust flew everywhere. The camera panned shakily toward her front porch. Toward her, standing with her suitcase, hair whipping around her face. Then Brandon appeared in the frame, disheveled and screaming. "What the hell is going on? Evelyn, get inside! Now!" The crowd gasped in the background. Evelyn felt her throat tighten as she watched herself on screen. Small, scared, but standing her ground. Then the helicopter door opened. Alexander stepped out, calm, controlled, handsome in a way that radiated authority. Someone in the video yelled, "Oh my God, that's Alexander Reeves!" The comments below exploded. But the video wasn't done. It caught Brandon trying to shove past security, screaming, "You can't take my wife! She's nothing without me!" Even through the grainy footage, the cruelty in his voice was unmistakable. Evelyn felt physically sick. Then came the moment that made social media erupt. Alexander stepping in front of her, protecting her with nothing but his body and a steady glare. And his voice, captured perfectly. "Your wife is leaving on her own. Don't speak to her like that again." The final shot was Evelyn taking Alexander's hand, walking toward the helicopter as the entire neighborhood watched. The clip ended. The view count ticked upward by the second. Evelyn's hand covered her mouth as she scrolled through thousands of comments. She deserves better. This man risked his life savings and her credit? Arrest him. That billionaire showed more love in a minute than her husband did in years. I hope she wins everything in the divorce. Some comments dissected Brandon's behavior. Others praised Alexander. Many simply said, "Run, Evelyn, run." Her chest tightened, emotions crashing everywhere. Humiliation, disbelief, relief, gratitude. Then the news headlines started rolling in. Local man melts down as wife is escorted by Reeves tech helicopter. Abusive husband exposed in viral video. Is Alexander Reeves rescuing a former employee? Her hands shook. This wasn't just a video, it was a wildfire. The phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Lydia, the lead attorney. "Evelyn, don't panic," Lydia said immediately. "The video works in your favor." "How? Everyone knows. Everyone's watching." "Exactly," Lydia replied. "Public opinion is on your side. More importantly, several financial institutions reached out after seeing your name trending. They're now cooperating with our investigation." Evelyn blinked. "You mean I'm credible?" "You were always credible," Lydia said, "but now the world sees it too." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. After the call, she set the phone down and stared out the window at Central Park. The city moved below her like a living ocean, fast, loud, bright. Her story was no longer hidden, her suffering was no longer secret. Her voice, quiet for years, had just echoed across the world. The suite door opened softly behind her. She turned. Alexander stood in the doorway, coat in hand, eyes scanning her expression. "You saw it," he said gently. Evelyn nodded, breath trembling. "Everyone has." He stepped closer, voice warm but steady. "Are you embarrassed?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "For once, I feel seen." Alexander exhaled, relief flickering in his eyes. And just as she moved to speak again, her phone lit up with a new notification. Brandon. And the message he sent would ignite a firestorm that made the viral video look smooth. Brandon's message flashed across Evelyn's screen, glowing like a warning flare before a storm. "You think this is funny? You think you can humiliate me? You owe me everything. I'm coming to the city. We're talking face to face." A chill bolted down her spine. She read it twice, 3 times. Each word felt like a claw reaching out of the past, trying to drag her back into the cage she had barely escaped. Alexander stepped closer, reading the tension on her face before she even turned the phone toward him. "He's threatening you," Alexander said, voice darkening. "He's furious because he lost control." Evelyn swallowed hard. He says he's coming here." Alexander took the phone from her gently. He won't get within a block of this hotel. My security team is already aware of him. And with the video going viral, he's under more scrutiny than he realizes. But Brandon wasn't just furious. He was unraveling. While Evelyn stood safely inside the plaza, Brandon's world was collapsing piece by piece. At that same moment, in the New Jersey house Evelyn had fled, Brandon paced across the living room with frantic energy. His phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from coworkers, acquaintances, even strangers mocking him. One text read, "Dude, your wife left you for Alexander Reeves?" Another, "Brandon, this is bad. Management is freaking out." Then came the worst one, from his boss. "Come in, now." He drove to the dealership with reckless speed, paranoia clawing at his throat. Every red light felt like an attack. Every honk sounded like judgment. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't thought beyond anger and denial. By the time he reached the dealership, 3 managers and the regional supervisor were already waiting for him. "What the hell is going on, Brandon?" one demanded, tossing a printed screenshot of the viral video across the desk. Brandon's jaw clenched. "This is all fake. Evelyn manipulated the whole thing. The billionaire, The billionaire," another manager interrupted dryly, "is someone our company does business with, and you screamed at his former employee on camera while his staff was present. Do you understand how insane that looks?" The room fell silent. Then the regional supervisor spoke firmly. "You're suspended, indefinitely." The words hit him like a punch. "You can't suspend me," he snapped. "You embarrass the brand," the supervisor said, "and until we understand the legal situation, we can't have you representing us." Brandon's phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from Daisy. He opened it quickly, hoping, praying she would defend him, soothe him, choose him, but her message was short. "Don't contact me again. This is too much. I'm done." He froze. Then the second message came. "And my dad saw the video. He knows everything. He's furious. I'm leaving town for a while." Brandon's chest tightened, breath hitching in panic. His affair was gone. His coworkers laughed behind his back. His job was slipping. His wife, his possession, had broken free. And the entire internet was watching. He stormed out of the dealership, slamming the glass door so hard it echoed across the parking lot. Anger swirled into desperation, feeding the darkest part of him. He needed control. He needed to win. He needed Evelyn back under his thumb, or at least to force her to face him. He texted again. "I'm getting a lawyer. You won't get a penny from me." Another text seconds later. "If you don't come home, I'll make sure your life is over." Back in the plaza suite, Evelyn read each message with growing clarity, not fear. She looked at Alexander, voice trembling but firm. "He's losing everything." Alexander nodded slowly. "Yes, and that's what happens when men like him finally face the consequences of their choices." Tears gathered in her eyes, not because she felt sorry for Brandon, but because she realized something monumental. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel helpless. She didn't feel alone. She looked out the window toward the skyline, a world she had once sacrificed, now waiting to take her back. And as she wiped her tears, the final message buzzed in, from an unknown number. "Mr. Reeves, this is the NYPD. We need to speak with Evelyn Hart regarding fraudulent financial activity and a potential domestic threat." Evelyn's breath faltered. The law was stepping in, and Brandon's fall was only just beginning. The next morning, Evelyn woke to the subtle hum of the city. Honking cabs, distant sirens, the soft rustle of Central Park trees carried up by the wind. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling of the plaza suite, reminding herself this wasn't a dream. She was free, or at least taking the first real steps toward freedom. A knock sounded on the door. "Evelyn, it's Alexander. Are you awake?" She sat up quickly. "Yes, come in." He stepped inside, dressed in a charcoal suit, sleeves slightly rolled from the early commute, looking powerful without trying. But what struck her wasn't his presence, it was the warm expression he wore, one that said he trusted her. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" she breathed, already nervous. "For your first strategy session. I need you with me in the boardroom today." Her stomach fluttered. "You need me?" He nodded firmly. "You have insights my team doesn't, and I want them to see that." Evelyn felt something rare warm her chest. Pride. But also fear. "What if I'm not ready?" "You are," he said. "You just don't remember how capable you are." An hour later, the elevator doors opened into the high-rise headquarters of Reeves Technology. The boardroom was a sweeping glass chamber overlooking Manhattan, the Hudson River glinting like silver, skyscrapers slicing the sky. Executives in tailored suits filled the room, murmuring to one another, shuffling documents. When they noticed Evelyn beside Alexander, the whispering paused. Alexander cleared his throat. "Everyone, this is Evelyn Hart. She'll be consulting with us." A few curious looks, a few polite nods, some skeptical glances. Evelyn's pulse hammered, but Alexander didn't move away from her. His presence was solid, grounding. He gestured for her to take the seat beside him, one typically reserved for a senior executive. A symbolic gesture, one that didn't go unnoticed. Carter, the financial investigator, stood at the front. "Today we're reviewing the failing lifestyle company you analyzed yesterday." Evelyn tensed. She hadn't realized he would share her notes. Carter clicked the remote. Graphs appeared on the large screen. Mrs. Hart identified 3 core issues: supply chain fragmentation, inefficient overhead allocation, and poor digital outreach. The executives murmured again, leaning forward. Alexander turned to her. "Evelyn, would you walk them through your recommendations?" Her breath caught. She froze. But then she met his eyes. He wasn't testing her. He believed in her. And a woman who has been believed in becomes dangerous, in the best way. Evelyn stood, smoothing her blazer with trembling hands. She faced the boardroom. The skyline glowed behind her like a crown. She took a deep breath. Then she spoke. At first her voice wavered, but as she moved through the data, charts, market gaps, strategic pivots, something shifted. Her tone steadied, her shoulders straightened, her confidence resurfaced like sunlight breaking through clouds. Executives began nodding. A few took notes. Carter smiled knowingly. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then applause. Soft at first, then growing. Alexander's eyes didn't leave her. He wasn't smiling because she impressed the room. He looked proud because she remembered herself. One woman at the table raised her hand. "Mrs. Hart, have you ever considered returning to full-time strategy work? You're exceptionally strong." Evelyn inhaled sharply. Compliments had become foreign currency. "I haven't thought that far," Alexander interrupted, voice smooth. "She will think about it. For now, she's consulting exclusively with us." The woman nodded, impressed. As the meeting ended, executives approached Evelyn one by one, shaking her hand, complimenting her analysis, asking if she'd join future sessions. When the final person left, the room quieted. Manhattan glowed beyond the glass like a world reborn. Alexander stepped closer. "I told you," he said softly. "Your talent never left." Emotion tightened her throat. "I didn't know I could still do any of this." "That's because you were surviving," he replied. "Not living. Not yet." She met his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm waking up." "You are," Alexander said, his tone warm, almost tender. "And the world is finally seeing the real you." But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from her lawyer. "Brandon has officially filed a legal complaint to stop the separation. He's claiming you committed fraud." Evelyn's heart dropped. Her rebirth was real, but the fight was far from over.